If you do not have Xcode installed in your Mac, simply go to the App Store, search for Xcode. You'll want version 6 or higher, download it, and install it. To start Xcode, you might find the icon down on your dock, and you can click that to begin the program. You could also go to the Launchpad and find Xcode in the Launchpad, or you can go to the Spotlight, either clicking the magnifying icon or Command Spacebar, and just start typing Xcode, and you'll find it in your applications. You can click it and start Xcode. This is the splash screen. I'm going to get started with a new Xcode project, and this is normally what we're going to do. We'll look at playgrounds in the next video, but I'm going to create a new Xcode project. The first thing is we're going to choose a template, and there are several templates here for us to choose from. We're going to choose single view application, but a master detail is an application that has maybe a list of items, and you click one, you get more detail over on the right. You can also have pages where you're going from page to page, or tabs where there's tabs at the bottom. For now, we're going to do just a single view application that's going to give us one screen, and this is the sort of beginning point for a very simple project. So I'm going to choose that, click Next, give my project a name. I'm going to call it Xcode Demo 1. The organization, and then the organization identifier, which typically is a backwards web address. So I just typed in edu.smcc, and instead of test2, I'm going to call this Xcode Demo 1. The language we're going to use is Swift, but notice that you could use Objective-C if you wanted. That's the older language used for iPhone and iPad development. And then the devices. We can choose iPad, iPhone, or Universal, which will allow us to do an application that would be for either iPad or iPhone. I'm just going to choose iPhone, click Next, and decide where I want to save it. So I'm going to save it in my Swift projects. Just simply click Create. And here we are in the Xcode IDE, or development environment. Over here on the left-hand side is our Navigator. And I have here the list of files that are part of this project. And I can click on one, such as the main storyboard. And over here in the middle is our editor, and I can edit that storyboard. Or if I want to get into the code for that view controller, I can access the code. There's also code for something called the app delegate, and we'll look more at these in future videos. So all my editing is done here. I can have two editors set up in that I might have an assistant editor, and this way I can see my view controller Swift code and my storyboard at the same time. And for the storyboard is I can zoom in and zoom out using the pinch controls of the keypad. So we have the Navigator, the editor. You can go back to just a single editor. And then over here is our utilities panel. This will give us information about the objects we have selected. We can also have sort of a toolbox here in which I can bring objects onto my storyboard. Maybe I want to switch or label. The easiest thing here to do is, if you know what you're looking for, so I want to label, I can just type in LA and see everything that has LA in its title, such as label. And I can be able to drag that over on my view controller. This utility here has several tabs at the top. Right now we're looking at the attributes, which is where we're going to do most of our work. There's also a size inspector. So I might change the size. And then there's more information here as far as help and identifying the type of objects we're working with, and then various collections. So again, we have Navigator, Editor, Utility Panel, and we can actually turn these on or off. I can hide or show the Navigator, and I can hide or show the Utility Panel, giving me a lot more room for my editing. There's a middle panel here in the center that adds some debug panels when we're testing our projects. I'm going to turn that back off and turn the other two back on for now. So for our first application, I'm going to create a variation of the traditional Hello World app. And one of the challenges we have in designing in iOS is we're working with different devices of different resolutions. In our storyboard, we want to set up controls, and we want those to be accessible with different resolutions. And so this is really a relative way of designing our screen. Down here in the bottom, you'll see that my width and height is any. This would be applied to any device. I'm going to click on that, and I get this dialog where I can stretch through these different rectangular areas and choose a layout. So this base layout here is for all layouts. I'm going to come down here and stretch down a little bit. This is for all regular height layouts. It's going to be for iPhones and iPads in portrait. And since we're only designing for the iPhone, I'm going to go ahead and choose this layout. And you'll see my width now is any and my height is regular. So what I want to do is bring a label and a button onto my view controller or onto my screen. I'm going to select the label and drag it over. Now you'll see that that didn't work. And one of the little gotchas here is that you need to be zoomed in a little bit in your view controller. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and now I can place my label. Okay, I want to get a button as well. And I put both these basically in the center. Now I'm going to hide the navigation and utility panels. I'm going to bring up that assistant editor, kind of split my view here. And what I want to do is where it says automatic, I'm going to come down and choose preview. I want to preview the main storyboard. And this is what it's going to look like on a 4-inch iPhone. Not exactly what I intended. The label and the button is way over here on the right. It's not centered. Well, I can add more devices. I'm going to bring up a iPhone 5.5-inch. And there at least I can see the items, but they're not centered. Just that the width is a little bit larger, a little bit wider, and so they fit better. I'm going to come back over here to my main storyboard. I'm going to select label. I'm going to hold down the control key, and I'm going to drag up, and I'm going to choose to center horizontally in the container. And you'll see my label is up here at the top, and it's centered horizontally. I don't want the label at the very top, so I'm going to come back here again, hold down the control key, and I'm going to drag back up to the top of my view. And I'm going to add top space to top layout guide. That's going to add some spacing and bring my label down. These are called constraints. And you'll notice it looks great now on both of these devices. I'll do the same thing with the button. I want the button, I'm going to select it, hold down the control key, I'm going to drag it up to the top of the form and choose center horizontally in container. Okay, now it's up here at the top. Notice that in my main storyboard it's below the label, but in the display on these phones it's going to be at the top. I don't want to do that. Instead I'm going to hold down the control key, grab my button. Instead of dragging the top, I'm going to drag it to the label and see I want to add vertical spacing. And now it's spaced below my label. So now it's going to look good on both of these devices. One of the biggest challenges in designing for iPhone and iPad is getting your interfaces designed correctly so they look good on each of the devices. And we'll be exploring that in more detail as we go through the semester. These constraints are really the key to do that. All right, so now I have my storyboard laid out, my interface done. I'm going to come back over here and turn these other panels back on. And instead of looking at the preview, I want to look at the Swift file for this view controller. This is going to define how these different items behave in code. And so I need to make some references to the label and the button in the code. I'm going to select my label. Over here in the Utilities panel, I'm looking at the Attributes panel. I can change the font here. I can make it larger or smaller. right now is the system font. I could change that system font to something else. I could choose custom, and I would have all my fonts on this system. I'm going to go back and because I don't know what my user has as far as fonts. But let's make it system bold. So it's kind of bolded out a little bit. And I'm going to increase this in size. Well, let's maybe go 20. Okay, I'll say done. My label here is too narrow to take that text. I'm just going to stretch it out. And I'm going to zoom out here just a little bit. Okay, I do want to center this text. And so I can choose the alignment here of center. Bring this over there. And for the button, I'm going to change the text of the button. And we'll just simply have it say campus. And for the label, let's change the text here to press the campus button. Okay, I need to stretch this out a little bit as well. And then I'm going to also put a back color on this button. Come down to background and put a little gray background on it. And let's change the foreground color as well. We'll make it a little bit, let's make it black so it's dark. Okay, so there's my interface. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see that. Since we made a few changes here, let's just double check in our preview. And that still looks pretty good. Okay, let's go back to our code. So what I need to do now is basically create links to these two objects or controls in my code for the view controller. So I'm going to take the button, I'm going to hold down the control key and drag over to my code. I'm going to come just below this class view controller, and it brings up a dialog box when I let go. I'm going to create what's called an outlet. Basically, it's going to allow us to give a name to this button. And I'm going to use Hungarian notation because I'm used to doing that with VB and C#. Most iOS programmers probably don't do this, but I like to start my labels with LBL. So we'll call this LBL welcome. And I'm going to click connect. So it creates a line of code in here defining this object as a variable. And it's a label type, but the variable name is LBL welcome. And you'll see this exclamation mark behind there. This is called an optional. This may or may not have a value assigned to it at this point. Okay, I want to do the same thing for the campus button. I'm going to hold down the control key. I'm going to drag over to just underneath our LBL welcome variable. I want to give this a name. We're going to call it BTN campus. But instead of it being outlet, there's some other options here. I want to make it an action. I want it to do something when we touch this button. And I can choose the event. The default is touch up inside. That's actually what we want. But you'll see there's a lot of different events here that we can choose from. So I'm going to do touch up inside. And I'm going to say connect. So here now is the code for that button. and it's going to be responding to a touch-up event. Well, when the user clicks that, I want to take LBO welcome, and I want to change the text of LBO welcome to equal welcome to CIS165 at SMCC. So we're going to change the text property, and I think I made that uppercase, and I shouldn't have. So LBO welcome.text equals welcome to CIS165 at SMCC. Probably no different from other languages you've used. I'm going to go to File and choose Save. And then above the navigation panel, up at the top of our information bar, you'll see that this is set for iPhone 6. This is the simulator we're going to run to test it. And so I'm going to click this button to build the application and run it on that simulator. So it'll take a few seconds for it to build, bring the simulator up, and we'll see if this thing works. There's our splash screen. There's our application. I click Campus, and I get welcome to CIS165 at SMCC. The application worked. So the simulator, then I'm going to quit the simulator. I'm back in my code, and I can continue making changes if I wanted. So that is basically how we create a very simple app using Xcode and Swift. In the next video, I'll show you how to work with playgrounds to do interactive coding with the Swift language.